Well, I don't know what that's about, but we're just gonna have to call him on the phone. His FaceTime. Wait, he's calling me. Thanks to everybody. If you're just tuning in now, we've had all sorts of weird technical gremlins attacking us, so we're just gonna get on with this. Are you there, Kevin?
I'm
Oh.
sitting outside for 15 minutes.
Well, wonderful. It's nice to hear your voice.
I think we should just talk by audio.
That sounds good to me. Did you call me by audio? He's going out the door. Say hi to everybody, Kevin Max.
I can hear you now.
Perfect.
Well, but your voice is pixelated.
Oh, awesome. That's even better. Well, I'm gonna just I'm gonna call you on your phone here, and we'll just do this by phone. Sorry to everybody watching. We don't know what happened. We tested it twice before this began, and that's just what's going down.
Connection.
All right. So here we are. Are you there, Kevin?
You've reached the phone of Kevin Max.
That's awesome. All right, here we go. Hey, Kevin.
Sorry, it's so pixelated. Your vocal is fragmented, and I can't make out what you're saying.
I need a vocal producer is what I need right now.
Obviously.
Well, I would have loved to have you on. I did see you for a brief moment before this began. Thanks to everybody. Hey, Eric, thanks for tuning in, man. Yes, we were playing some Boiling Point here before we began. Of course, this is ccmmagazine.com live, and the deal with the live show is that you're at the whims of the digital do-gooders and digital creeps out there.
And digital morons like Kevin Max.
And me, yes. So, well, yeah, but I'm stoked to have you here. There are a lot of people that are excited about seeing you and talking to you. So it's summertime. Are you at home right now? You said you were moving some merch around. You're getting ready to get on tour.
We're getting ready to hit the road next weekend. We're going to California first for Joshua Fest.
Nice.
And then we're heading up the coast to Washington State and Oregon State and
my old hood. Yep.
Your old hood, man. We're doing 5 or 6 shows in the Seattle area, the Washington, kind of. It's all within like 2 to 3 hours of Seattle, and then we're doing Portland, Oregon, as well at the Old Church downtown, which is a really cool venue.
Nice.
Doing Joshua Fest, of course. Two days at Joshua Fest, which will be fun with my buddies David Crowder and. For King and Country and the choir, lots of fun people.
Is this the most touring you've done in a while, like in a summer?
My summers are kind of it depends. It really depends. Like I tend to do like between 20 to 30 shows a year, and I hand pick them because I'm really picky. But after I turned 50, I just decided I'm going to do them all.
You're going to do all the shows?
I'm just going to do them all.
Yeah.
So whenever anybody asks me to do a show, now I say yes.
That's awesome. Does that make, though, sometimes for some awkward situations? You're like, just strange venues or events, like, I don't know, a bingo hall wants to hire Kevin Max all of a sudden versus, a stadium kind of seating or a fair or something like that. Do you ever have any weird kinds of things?
Obviously it comes down to my wife saying yes or no too.
Yeah, that's true.
Because she really doesn't want me to go out and do the bingo palaces necessarily. But, if they're going to pay me enough to, feed the children, then I'm okay.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
We do have a line. We do have a line that we try not to cross,
Yeah.
But I have sang at funerals, weddings, no bar mitzvahs yet.
Yeah, no. That's awesome. So summer, you've been saying yes to a lot of shows. What's summer like with the Max fam? I mean, what do you guys do? What does Kevin Max and his family do when you're not creatively engaged?
Well, I mean, this summer's been interesting because I put out a new album, as you know, called AWOL.
That's right.
And lots of action with that because we decided to manage the pledge campaign ourselves this time. So my wife and I are the ones that are doing the delivery on this, which is, we have boxes filled with CDs now and T-shirts and things that we have to send out to people.
Yeah.
And so when you're signing over, 300, 400 CDs, and it gets, you remind yourself that management is really important.
Right.
But I mean, besides AWOL releasing, I live in Franklin, Tennessee. I live in a very, very cool neighborhood called West Haven. My house is right across from a park and a little pond, a fishing pond, actually.
Oh, wow.
So my kids fish during the day, and we go hiking in the area a lot. I love to play tennis, so I'm playing tennis as much as I can with people that, will dare to play me because I seem to beat everybody I play.
Nice.
But it's kind of a typical mom and dad thing. I mean, if I'm not on the road, I try to help out. My kids are all homeschooled, so my wife is the homeschool teacher.
Yeah.
And I'm the principal, so I show up and I make them read really strange fantasy books, like The Hobbit and Dune.
Yeah.
And Stephen R. Donaldson, the White Ring Wielder, things like that, where they're like, Dad's weird fantasy books, are more difficult than algebra. So then they're kind of hesitant to let me in the room sometimes.
Yeah. you want them to get an A in existential thought.
Yes, expanding their imagination is number one for me.
That's awesome. How's the transition been from being from living the farm life to being back in sort of suburban Franklin?
Well, we were in suburban Franklin for 4 years before we bought the farm.
Right.
So in the same neighborhood. So we love this neighborhood. It's a kind of a planned community. It's got its own grocery store.
It's awesome. There are
shops.
a lot of artists are there too, and producers.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of people here. I could name drop a lot of folks.
Yeah.
But I choose not to. I mean, Michael Tate and I got in my golf cart the other night and rode around, and we're trying to find certain houses, so that we could do little pranks on them and stuff. But
yeah.
There's just too many people here. The farm was amazing because, obviously we had our own area. We had 22 acres. We had horses, and I have my own studio, which was a miniature version of the log cabin that was on the property.
Yeah.
So it's very cool to bring people up and produce for them and write with them, and we'd go camping right outside the front door of the studio because we're in literally like the top of the mountain, or it's a large hill here in Tennessee, but in the middle of just unobstructed nature. And you hear coyotes at night that were so loud that I'd have to turn my TV up just to hear it.
Oh man.
So it was amazing. But it was too far for my wife to drive the kids to do certain things. It was like an hour into town. So,
yeah.
That's 2 hours a day just to drive here and there. And it got to be a bit too taxing on us,
Weren't you toying with the idea of living like the mobile life? Like doing...
Oh man, I'm not toying with it. I'm still into it. I think we're going to keep our house, but we really want to get some kind of a camping vehicle and teach the kids, all about the United States.
Man, that's awesome. That's so cool. Speaking of your kids, have you seen any of them to show any kind of musical creative inclinations yet?
Oh yeah. I mean, they came out on the road with me when I did Audio Adrenaline.
Yeah.
And it was fun to bring Knightley up on stage and Wilder up on stage. London came out a few times. She's not really into being up on stage during a rock show. It kind of freaks her out a little bit, which I understand. I take them to shows here and there as a solo artist as well. I mean, I did a show on my porch 2 weeks ago with Dan Hazeltine of Jars.
Yeah, I saw that. That's awesome.
Russ Taff came by and sang. Derek Webb. a lot of my friends, Matthew Perriman Jones.
That's awesome.
And it was a blast. And so my kids got to see that. There were 300 people sitting out in front of our porch, So yeah, they know what's up. They came on the Jesus Freak cruise.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, they're pretty blown away that their dad had like pictures of himself in these huge elevators,
That's when you know you made it with your kids. It's like, look, I'm on an elevator.
Absolutely.
We were on that cruise together a year ago. We set sail a year ago yesterday. I saw all the memories.
Yours was the only interview of note. I've seen that on YouTube. It's like the only interview that we got in there on DC Talk. And I was, I look at that interview and I'm like, man, we should have talked a lot more about, all the albums and tours we're going to be doing in the future. But
yeah, everyone was so tight-lipped. It's so unlike you guys, like so strange. Yeah, that was a good time. And I mean, has it quieted down or ramped up all the people like clamoring for news? Like I would think to some degree it would sort of quiet things down, but am I wrong? Has it only gotten worse?
I mean, DC Talk's an interesting group because, obviously we hadn't done anything for 15 years until that cruise. But obviously we were so large in the 90s that we cultivated a crowd that I think is still really interested in wanting to see us play, but even more importantly, wants to hear what we do, musically and creatively. And that's something that I'm really trying to push both of the guys on to do something more musical, because I think that's obviously why we came together. We all loved music. The fact that we all had the same faith. I mean, we all, grew up in Christian homes, but we believed, what we grew up, how we were taught as kids. And so we had a passion for our faith. We had a passion for, pushing the envelope with lyrics about what we believed in. And I think that's what made DC Talk a really interesting spectacle, is that, during the 90s, we were kind of unashamed about what we wanted to sing about. But at the same time, we wanted to create a show that kind of pushed the envelope as far as production and performance. And so, yeah, I think DC Talk has a lot to give and a lot to do. I think that...
Yeah, as you say that, it makes me think of that song you have on AWOL, Between Two Worlds, isn't it?
Yes, it's called Brand New Hit. Actually.
Oh, that's right, Brand New Hit. Yes, Brand New Hit.
I was really trying to get a hit on the radio.
Called Brand New Hit.
I named the song Brand New Hit, just thinking, man.
Nobody, if you haven't, radio people haven't taken the hint yet, jump on. That's a great song. It's one of my favorites on the album, and I love what you say there is about. I mean, you're really trapped between these two worlds of the past and the future, and that's sort of been, in a sense, your career is like a lot of people. On the one hand, you really honor the DC Talk days, and you see them quite fondly, but on the other hand, you're like, I've got all this other stuff too, and the people in the future are like, well, you're going to write a hit, and you're trapped in the middle going, no, I'm just an artist trying to do what I feel is best creatively, like what I'm called to do. And I love that. That's sort of like, that song is like your rallying cry, your mission statement. Is that pretty accurate?
I mean, yeah, when the whole album is really up to date on what's going on in my life. And I mean, even, a song like Melissa is dealing with, some friends that I had back in high school, and just thoughts that I had about, how now that I've grown up, things that I would do differently, and, but yeah, Brand New Hit is really about, it is a very interesting place to be, as a solo artist that is, when I do music, it's really kind of typically put into the alternative sections, or the indie or the eccentric section of music. And, DC Talk was obviously more pop, mainstream, whatever you want to call it. So there are two different sides musically what's happening there. But I'm actually interested in the next record to see how far I could push the pop envelope, because I haven't done that in a while.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested to see if I could make a really cool CCM record. Actually, it's kind of like an experiment. I want to try it.
I love that about you. You've got this rock side of you. You've also got this like prog rock side of you, which is totally different than the rock, just the straight up rock side. You've got this experimental EDM kind of side of you. You've also got, the pop side, and I love that as I listen through your 13 now albums, which is insane. None of them is more Kevin Max than another. They're all just like different facets of you. Do you have a favorite, or is it just like whatever I'm working on now is my favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I do have what I would consider like my go-to style of music, and that really would be kind of AWOL on the record before that, Playing Games with the Shadow.
Yeah.
Records like Crashing Gates, Between the Fence, The Imposter. All of those are really kind of what I do naturally. But some of the more experimental records, like The Blood, I made a gospel record just because I wanted to make a record because I grew up in the church and I grew up listening to all these old gospel standards, as hymns. And I was like, man, I'd really love to make a record that showcases that. But then, of course, I threw in the odd George Michael and Stevie Wonder song too.
Yeah.
And then, Starry Eye Surprise, which is kind of like a jazz crooner album.
Yes, that's right. How could I forget the crooner genre as well? Man, you've got so many.
Well, I mean, I love so many different forms of music. I mean, The only types of music I really don't listen to would be country or, I don't really listen to like disco dance.
You can still pull it off, though, I bet. I bet you could still.
I mean, we're going to play with the dance element on this next record because I feel like people really love to move and get up and dance these days,
Yeah.
And especially the youth are into like stuff that just kind of gets them moving. And so I thought, it might be fun to do a really groove-oriented record and just see what happens, because I'm pretty white man can't dance, but when I do try dancing, it is an interesting thing. I mean, I feel like I have my own style there too.
And I mean, you just have to worry about making the music everyone else can dance, or just
exactly.
Or get Tate on stage with you.
No, no. I would just. Yeah, I'm just going to stand behind the microphone and let everybody else dance.
That's right.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Well, how would you say after 13 albums, and now it sounds like you're already on to number 14, that you approach making music differently than you did when you started back in 2001 as a solo artist? By the way, everyone watching, I am watching your questions, and I'll throw them at Kevin shortly. So, yeah, anyway.
Can you ask me that again? I'm so sorry.
Sorry, no, I interrupted myself. How would you say that now that you're on your 14th record that you're working on, that you approach making music differently than you did when you started solo in 2001?
Yeah, 2001 was very different because just coming off the back of being in DC Talk, which was decidedly a certain thing in the studio.
Yeah.
Toby and Mark Heimerman would get together and they'd come up with these tracks, and then Michael and I would come in and throw our ideas around, and then we'd ultimately sing on them and change things melodically as well. Mm-hmm. And the last two records specifically, I wrote lyrics and I wrote melodies on it as well, so I was a writer on those. But it was a very interesting thing in DC Talk because we all had our role to play.
Yeah.
When I went solo, it was kind of like, wow, all these ideas, I can shape them on my own.
Yeah.
And so I was like a kid in a candy store, like going, okay, what can I do? And that's why I hired my buddy Adrian Belew,
yes.
Who played for David Bowie and the Talking Heads and people like that. And then he hired Tony Levin, who was playing for Peter Gabriel. And then I hired Matt Chamberlain on drums, who is arguably probably the best drummer on the planet. So that record was very interesting because it was like I got to do everything I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Just kind of throw it all up on the wall and see what sticks.
Oh, yeah.
And that's basically what it was. Since then, over time, I've learned a lot more tricks of the trade. I've learned that, it's always good to to bounce ideas off other people, because inevitably, if you're left alone in the studio with nobody else telling you, that song might not be the best one to throw on here.
Sure.
It's kind of like somebody telling you, your breath is bad, go brush your teeth, as opposed to nobody, being able to tell you that. I kind of have learned throughout the years to bounce certain things off people, and I think collaboration is really great. Mm-hmm. And I'm starting to want to do more collaboration with writers. Like with Playing Games with the Shadow, I wrote that whole album by myself. But with AWOL, I wrote with my producer, Kieran Kelly, every song on the record with the exception of Moonracer and Cornucopia, which were two songs that I wrote on the piano by myself. But when I write, I usually write with guitar players because I'm not a guitar player. I'm a keyboardist. So
right. Bringing
a guitar player in always brings another facet to the music, and I love that.
That's awesome. Well, and of course the industry's changed so much, and what is, it's funny you said you're toying around with, maybe even making a CCM record, because I mean, really over time it's been like a long-term relationship where you have ups and downs, and and sometimes the game of I mean, as people know, like there's a short list of people that even get on Christian radio anymore, and that
short list.
and getting shorter every day, actually. And even if you're a label signed artist, much more difficult for the independents. It's interesting, but yet you have such a heart for the church and for those people that you've been able to reach over the years with your specific way of doing things. I mean, how would you say, like, I don't know, that you navigate that dance of not wanting to play the game but wanting to reach people?
I mean, the way I see it now is that, I mean, sometimes you have to create the album that has potential for radio. And, once you get a song on the radio, then it opens people up to what you do. And then it kind of gives you the license to make more artistic albums that might not be on the radio, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I've decided, this next record, I'm really going to go for radio, because I haven't done that in years.
Yeah.
And mainly because when I listen to the radio, I don't like most of what I hear.
Right.
But I think that's changing. I think that there's a lot of, and you're one of those people, you're one of those purveyors of change in that in the industry. It's like, I think there's a lot of groups, a lot of artists that are making really wonderful, legitimate music that aren't being heard. But I think the issue would be then to write something that could be heard, and then open the door to all the other stuff that you're writing.
Right.
And I think that, like a guy like Crowder is really, really smart about things like that. He'll write a couple of songs that get on the radio, but then the rest of his album is stuff that he wants to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And wouldn't be on the radio. So it's kind of a balancing act. And I'm just kind of learning that for the first time.
Yeah, totally.
I'm starting to realize, okay, in my 50s, okay, now you've got to make a song that people want to play on the radio, and I tried with this record with a song called Prodigal,
Great
Run
song.
to You,
Great
which
song.
is getting some traction at Spotify, and people are kind of picking it up here and there, and there's a lot of independent stations that are asking for me specifically to play that. And so I got close to it on this record, but I don't think that it was a slam dunk. So next album, I'm writing with a lot of people that I consider to be like really big radio writers, just to see what we could come up with. Your
neighbor Seth Mosley, you gonna work with him?
I'd like to. I mean, Seth is busy, man.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a line out his door all the way down the street.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on. Well,
he does like my voice though, which is a good foot in the door.
That's right.
But,
and I mean, literally, he's your neighbor, so you just walk over.
He is.
Well, not literally, but he's in the neighborhood. 3
or 4 streets removed and up a big hill, so it's still like a little bit of a walk.
Yeah. I want to make sure I get to some of these fan questions here. Alyssa wants to know, what's the main thing you want people to get out of your music, and I will say specifically AWOL.
Well, the main thing I want people to get, man, I mean, there's so many things that, I want people to hear when they hear my music. I mean, the number one thing I think is just joy in being alive,
Yeah.
and having the chance to breathe every day, and, learning during that life, and really making decisions in a way that could help people as far as hinder people. And I think it's just kind of learning from your mistakes. That's kind of something that is a constant that runs through my music. It's like redemption's another big thing that I attach to my music. I mean, None of us are perfect.
Right.
We all mess up. We all have secrets. We all want to be better than we actually are.
Yes.
But I think that's when the relationship with God comes in, and that's the struggle, and that's what I like to talk about.
Yeah,
because obviously believing in God is a huge leap of faith.
Yes.
So that's one conversation. The next conversation is, okay, we're all down here on this planet struggling. How do we make it through, and better yet, how do we live a life that's full and magnificent?
Yeah. Well, I love it. And I mean, the one thing you'll get with your music is you're not hiding behind pretense. You're not hiding behind, cliches. You are. It's very vulnerable, and wherever you're at in a particular process, you are sharing that. And I think that's why a lot of people really resonate with it. Sherry wants to know your favorite. Her favorite song from AWOL is "Cornucopia of the Soul." She'd like to know the inspiration for writing this song.
Yes. Well, that song came about with me on my keyboard, just kind of, having fun one night, coming up with these chords, and then what happens is I come up with a musical bed,
Yeah.
and you start going, okay, well that's cool. What I end up doing is I just start singing nonsense lyrics to melodies that I've written on the piano, and then I kind of go back and go, okay, that phrase might be this, and I start putting lyrics to it.
Yeah.
Cornucopia is a really perfect example of what I do on my own in the studio. And it's the lyrics are kind of they're a little esoteric, but it's really talking about the struggle of humanity again. It's talking about trying really hard to be in a place that you can feel comfortable, and that you have joy, and that you have peace, you know. But I talk about tempests coming and going throughout your life. I mean, those are the things. Those are the storms in life are the things that shape you and make you stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And so not to run away from the storm, but to almost kind of run headlong into it.
Yeah.
And accept it for what it is, and learning from it after that. I mean, that's what makes a strong person, and that's what makes a strong soul. I mean, if you're ever around somebody that really, leaves an impression on you, usually it's a person that's been through a lot.
Right.
So that's kind of what that song is saying in a nutshell. But I enjoyed doing that and Moonracer both. Those were written on my farm before I moved back into Franklin, and written on my keyboard. I have a little Novation keyboard that sits on my desk, and I write in a program called Logic. I don't write in Pro Tools. All my other friends use Pro Tools, but I use Logic, which is logical.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Finally, Melanie wants to know if you're thinking about publishing any more of your poetry.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, somebody asked me the other day, and I'm not going to go into it, but somebody asked me to submit some poems for something the other day. And it's a pretty high-profile thing. And so I sent some poetry to them, and it got me thinking about poetry again, because it's something I kind of do when I'm really bored.
Yeah.
When I'm extremely bored, which isn't very often, because I'm always interested in something.
Yeah.
But I'm a curious soul. But
Yes.
When I'm really bored, I write poetry, and so it's definitely. on my radar, and I kind of teased about it on my fan page on Facebook, which is called The Fiefdom of Kevin Max.
Yes.
And we talked about doing another poetry project, and so I'm thinking about doing a spoken word project.
Oh wow!
Where maybe one of my artistic guitar playing friends can help me come in the studio and put some music around it and do some spoken word, do some poetry. The thing about poetry books is that they don't really sell anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like really hard to sell a book, first of all.
Yeah.
On top of that, selling a poetry book, it's almost like, trying to sell electronic polka to people,
Yeah.
It might work, but...
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, maybe you just need an app, the Kevin Max app, like where it wakes up, like you would wake me up with your voice. Like, you'd sing Time to Wake Up, or you'd like hum Reveille.
Speaking a poem, speaking about a poem that about the sunrise and how the birds are out.
Wouldn't that be awesome? I actually would. I'd buy that app.
Yeah, it's a really great idea. I've been asked by several people about apps, because they are kind of. But look at what we do. We talk on Facebook all day. We talk on Twitter all day.
Yeah.
We're constantly Instagramming. Like what else do we need?
Kevin Max to wake us up in the morning.
Maybe it is a Kevin app. Maybe it's a poetry Kevin Max poetry app. I like this idea.
Well, where it like interrupts you in the day for quiet reflection. I think
you mean like the Bible app does.
Yeah.
Kind
of, except it's your voice.
The Bible app interrupts me like 2 or 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And I love it because it makes you go, oh wow, I gotta read that. And then when you read it, you're like, man, it was absolutely worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So yeah, I'm not comparing my poetry to the Bible.
No. Of course, nope. It's
not at all.
It's just different layers of inspiration throughout your day. See,
yes.
we'll get to work on that, Kevin. Okay. Finally, how can all of us watching? It looks like some of your fiefdoms here. That's cool. How can we all be praying for you right now?
Oh man, I mean, just the normal everyday things. Health is a big thing. I mean, I'm going to be 51 in August. I know it's not really old. It's kind of like smack dab in the Middle Ages. So it's fun to be 51. But also your body starts, slowing down in certain ways. And in certain ways it doesn't. In certain ways it keeps going. And
yeah, you're schooling people at tennis.
I'm relatively lucky to have great health. I haven't had any health issues. But I know a lot of people that do. Yeah. And so I'm always concerned about that. Like, what am I eating? What am I doing? I need to exercise more, My kids, are a big part of my life as is my wife. So, their protection and their health is like a huge thing to me. Obviously, they're ahead of me on that scale. Be my wife and kids first, then me. Yeah. Just that the Lord continues to direct my path, Yeah. I'm always very curious as to where He wants me to go, and I think it's every one of us are like that. It's like we really want to know what His will or what His path for us, that designed path. What is that? Yeah. Where are we supposed to go? And I think that's where we find out through the trial and errors of life, and that's why the cornucopia song makes so much sense. In this case, it's like, the tempests come and go, but after they're gone, that's when you're shaped, and that's when you realize how you can move forward or move backwards.
Right. That's good, and you are a willing traveler, and I love that.
I am. I'm a traveler. I'm actually, strangely enough, because we thought about this motorhome thing, Yeah. We have a couple of friends that have been doing it. Specifically, my friend Mark Stewart from Audio A and his wife started traveling with this really beautiful camper that they bought, And I'm like, we can do that. I mean, I love driving 10 hours a day. Like, that's like one of my favorite things to do. People think I'm crazy. like I drive to events. I drive to shows.
Yeah.
I drove to my shows that I did in New York a couple months ago. I'm not driving to California or Washington State.
That's good. Good.
That I have to get on a plane. But yeah, so I'm really interested in traveling. I just wish that we had a motor vehicle like that in Europe as well, because I'd rather travel Europe than the States. But the States have a lot to show you.
That's true.
Yep.
Well, awesome. Everybody watching right now, let's just take a moment while we've got him to pray for Kevin. Well, Lord, I just thank you so much for Kevin. Thank you for just the dance that he is willing to dance with you, of highs and lows, of what kind of music to make and to whom it goes to. Thank you that he's receptive. Thank you that he's someone that is very reflective and that you can use, God. And I just pray that you continue to do that. Bless his family, bless his health, bless just the willingness that he has to continue creating. And so, God, we just ask that that you would help him continue to rest in the ways you've divinely called him. And to continue to push into unknown places joyfully and excitedly. So we just pray for traveling mercies, for safety, for really great experiences on this next tour, and that you just continue to do what you do through him. Pray in Jesus' name, Amen.
Amen.
All right, everybody.
Thanks, Marcus.
Yes, AWOL is the record. It's out where you get music, so go find it. It looks like that. It's Kevin in an awesome uniform and all sorts of it's psychedelic imagery. I love it. It's so awesome.
Hippie. It's a little hippie.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and they can go to kevinmax.com obviously for everything, but I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on all. I'm not on Snapchat. My kids are. I need to get on Snapchat.
No, no. Just resist. I've resisted. I'm not a millennial.
Okay,
I'm just a tad older than a millennial. So I'm like, no. I'll use it for the filters to make my face look funny, but Snapchat, no.
Well, if we're still live, I just want to apologize for not, that people not seeing my face, because we tried very hard. I mean, earlier today, Marcus and I got reception immediately, and then for whatever reason, it's just been really difficult to connect my phone. So
they get to see a great still picture of you the whole time, so it's all good. You're just a great ventriloquist. It's amazing.
Okay, so you did have a still picture though.
I did, yes. So,
okay.
Yeah. So,
well, yeah. I'm. Next time we do this, maybe I'll need to download some really hardcore app or something that tells me how to, communicate with people online.
We'll just do it in person. We'll make it easier.
Much better.
All right, man. Much thanks and blessings to you guys, and we'll talk soon, my friend.
Okay, brother. Thanks so much,
Take
Marcus.
care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Well, thanks, everyone. Sorry that didn't go quite the way we originally imagined, but the important thing is you were here, he was here. Great conversation. If you like the show and you want to have suggestions for things we can do on it, special segments, maybe some guests, write it down in the comments or message us at CCM Magazine. You can find these and all of the episodes at ccmmagazine.com. They're posted almost immediately after the broadcast. And pretty soon this is going to turn into a podcast, it sounds like. So that's cool too. So I hope you will join us next week. Look, we've got some awesome guests. We've got, I hope the music's not too loud. There we go. We've got Jamie Grace on Tuesday. So excited. She's a good friend. I've interviewed her probably half a dozen times. It's different every time. Excited to see what she does. She'll probably play a song for us too. The newly married Jamie Grace, by the way. So we're excited to have her. Mari, who is the host of kind of the other side of what CCM's been doing, some of these interviews and lifestyle stuff. We're going to just talk about what she's up to. Independent artist who's just a character, just a blast. We're going to get to talk to her. And then on Thursday, a week from today, we're going to have Zion's Joy. If you've never heard of them, they've been all over the news recently because Facebook took down their video. There was some controversy over that. We're going to get to know who they are and really that whole thing that God's actually really being glorified through this whole thing with Facebook, and who actually apologized and restored their video, so that's super cool. But we're going to get to know them. They'll be there on the 19th, so we hope to see you there Tuesday through Thursday. Right now we're doing this at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. In a couple of weeks it's going to become a nighttime show, so mark your calendars. And we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.